You know how some people just carry chaos around with them like it's part of their outfit? That was Marcus. Always loud, always amped up, always pushing things just a little too far. And somehow, no matter how many times things went sideways, we kept letting him take the lead. I don't even know why. Maybe because it was easier than trying to stop him. Or maybe because deep down we thought nothing actually bad would ever happen. I've got more stories about Marcus than I can count. Stupid bar fights, getting kicked out of places, close calls with campus security. But this one's different. Because this one ended with my face in the ER and rope burns around my neck. It was our last day of senior year. Not graduation, just the last actual day of classes. There's this tradition at our school where seniors get obliterated at the clock tower. 1,000 people, all celebrating and drinking like the world's ending. We were part of that crowd, me, Marcus, and a few others. It was supposed to be harmless. A send-off. One last night of being dumb before the real world set in. But the thing with Marcus is, harmless doesn't exist. He had this need to stir things up, like he was allergic to calm. And I guess we all just got used to the wake he left behind. We stopped asking questions, stopped wondering when the wrong person was finally going to push back. Looking back now, I think that's what really gets to me. Not just what happened that night, but the fact that we all saw it coming in some way and still didn't do a damn thing to stop it. It's like we were walking towards something we knew was waiting, and we let him lead us straight into it. We had stopped at this corner store on Linwood just before heading to the clock tower. Nothing special, just one of those grimy little spots with flickering lights and half-empty shelves. We were grabbing snacks, maybe some chasers, I don't even remember now. What I do remember is Marcus doing what Marcus always does, starting something with someone who hadn't even looked at us funny. The guy was standing near the door, kind of slouched, maybe 30 or 40, wearing a windbreaker that was way too big for him. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there like he was waiting for someone, or maybe just warming his hands. But Marcus brushed past him with that smug, twitchy energy, like he was trying to provoke something on purpose. I don't even know what started it. A look, a muttered word. Whatever it was, Marcus locked onto him like a dog with a bone. They started shouting, not a real fight, not physical, but loud enough that it drew attention. Loud enough that I felt that little pinch of dread settle in. I stepped between them after a few seconds, just to move things along. No one needed to get arrested on the last day. The guy didn't follow us. He just stood there. That's what sticks with me. The others were already laughing about it before we'd even turned the corner. But I looked back, just once, and the guy was still standing in the same exact spot. Not yelling, not pacing, just staring, like he hadn't even heard what we said, like he was watching a screen, and we were the characters. Back then, I didn't think much of it. But now I keep wondering if that moment wasn't the beginning of everything else. The walk home should have been forgettable. We were loud, stupid, buzzing from the night. Nothing felt real yet. Finals were over. Classes done. We were still wearing the weight of it all, but it hadn't quite sunk in that it was over. That stretch across 4th Street, over the bridge where your footsteps bounce back at you, was usually quiet that time of night. But not that night. Someone stepped out into the middle of the walkway. Just blocked the path. His clothes didn't match the weather, and his voice didn't match the hour. He was yelling, but it wasn't coherent, just this disjointed ramble, like static wrapped in threats. I remember not even knowing what he wanted. It was like he wasn't talking to us, just near us. Like we were trespassing in some place he'd already claimed. The rest of us veered off, instinctively, eyes down. Keep walking. Don't feed it. We'd all had enough city nights to know how to move around chaos. But Marcus didn't step away. He stopped. He squared up. Like this was his moment to perform, to puff up and make something happen. He was baiting the guy, not with words exactly, but with his presence, daring him, daring us. He wanted the guy to do something, and we just stood there, frozen on the edge of it. I remember the sound of wind across the guardrails, the stillness of the others, waiting to see if something would snap. I remember thinking it wasn't the first time Marcus had done this, but it felt like it might be the first time it wouldn't blow over. And I should have said something. I know that now, but I didn't. None of us did. We just waited for whatever came next. Marcus didn't warn anyone. He just took off. 1 second we were standing there trying to figure out if the guy on the bridge was actually a threat or just another burnout yelling into the void, and the next, Marcus was sprinting at him like it was a joke. Full speed, arms wide, laughing like a maniac. The guy didn't wait, he turned and ran, fast too. Disappeared down the far end of the bridge and vanished into the dark like he knew every crack in the pavement. We stood there for a second, stunned. And then, because it was Marcus and because we'd seen this kind of thing before, we laughed. It was messed up, I knew that even then. But it was that uncomfortable, relieved kind of laugh. Like when tension breaks and you let go of something heavy without meaning to. We thought that was it. We figured it was over. Just another story for the pile. But maybe 10 minutes later, while we were a few blocks from the house, I looked back, just casually, just checking the street behind us, and someone was there, far enough back that I couldn't make out a face, but close enough to know they weren't just out for a walk. They weren't rushing, they weren't yelling, just there, keeping pace, close enough to make you wonder, far enough that you couldn't be sure. I didn't say anything. Neither did anyone else. Maybe they didn't see, or maybe they did, and chose not to react. Either way, we kept walking, eyes forward. Like if we didn't name it, it wouldn't be real. But it was. I think about that moment a lot, how we knew something had changed and how we pretended it hadn't. We were maybe a block or two from our place when it finally hit me that we might be making a mistake. That slow, sinking kind of realization that creeps in under the noise. There was still someone behind us. I hadn't looked again, not directly, but I felt it, that tug in the back of your mind that doesn't go away. I said something. I remember that much. Something about how we probably shouldn't lead this guy back to our house. About how if he was following us for a reason, we were basically handing him a map. The others nodded or mumbled in agreement. It was one of those moments where everyone agreed in theory but no one actually moved. We just kept walking, still in that hazy post-party fog where everything feels distant and slow. And then, without a word, Marcus took off again. Same routine. Full sprint, shoulders forward, laughing like he was in on some joke the rest of us hadn't caught up to yet. The guy ran again. That part played out exactly the same, but the energy shifted. I don't know how to explain it, but something about the way he moved, this time it didn't feel panicked. He wasn't scrambling or flailing or tripping over himself like before. He was just leaving, like he knew he didn't need to stay close anymore. We all laughed again, but it felt hollow, like we were repeating a punchline that had stopped being funny. I think we wanted to believe it was over, that Marcus had scared him off for good. But deep down, I don't think I believed that. Not for a second. It didn't feel like we'd gotten rid of him. It felt like we'd just bought ourselves a few more minutes. I'd like to say I was alert, that I saw it coming, but the truth is I wasn't. I was drunk. Not blackout, but that thick, foggy kind of drunk where everything feels soft around the edges. I had just gone outside to grab my food order. That was it, just a midnight DoorDash run. That's all I thought I was doing. But the side gate was open, and that gate was never open. We always kept it tied shut with a little strand of twine. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep it from swinging in the wind. But it wasn't broken. It was untied, deliberately, like someone knew how we kept it closed. I wish that had been enough to stop me. But I didn't say anything, didn't yell inside. I just put my food down on the front step and walked around back, half expecting to find the wind had done something it couldn't actually do. And then it hit. Not a shove, not a punch, just this sudden pressure, tight, brutal, and wrong. Rope, thick and coarse, slipping over my throat from behind. I couldn't see him. I couldn't scream. My body went full panic before my brain even caught up. I remember flailing, kicking, feeling my heels dig into dirt and my knees buckle. I remember the sound of my own gasping and nothing else. Everything else blurs. I don't know how I got out of it. I don't remember fighting him off. Just flashes, his weight shifting, my legs swinging back, the sharp sting of something scraping my face. Blood, breath, then him gone, like he'd evaporated. But he was real. The rope burns on my neck, the blood on my shirt, none of that was in my head, and I don't think he ever meant to finish it that night. Just send a message. The cops came. They took a statement, asked the usual questions. Did you see his face? Any identifying features? Was there a reason he'd target you? That kind of thing. I don't even remember what I said. It didn't matter. They didn't seem like they were planning to do much, and I didn't push it. I think I already knew how this kind of thing ends. I moved out a week later. That had always been the plan. Graduation, then out. But it felt different now. Like I wasn't just moving on. I was leaving something behind I didn't want to carry with me. The backyard, the alley, even the walls of that house felt like they'd soaked it in. The cuts on my face weren't deep. Not really. Nothing that needed stitches. Just surface stuff. Scratches, scrapes, the kind of damage you'd call minor if it wasn't on your own skin. But they're there, frozen in every single graduation photo. Right side of my face. Faint lines, like reminders carved into memory. Marcus tried to make up for it, in his way. Took me out for noodles the next day. Talked a lot, didn't really say anything. I never blamed him, not directly, but I think some part of me did, maybe still does. I don't even know what I expected him to do differently. He was always chaos. We knew that, we followed him anyway. I keep thinking about that night. Was it the guy from the store? The one on the bridge? Or someone else we never even noticed? I guess it doesn't matter. What matters is someone was watching, someone followed, and I wasn't careful enough to stop them. And the worst part? I don't think they were done. I think they just chose to wait. You ever flip through an old yearbook and spot something that just doesn't sit right? Something that, at the time, barely registered, but now it won't leave your head. That's how it started for me. It was the last day of 8th grade. Everyone was signing each other's yearbooks, writing those corny inside jokes and never change messages. Mine had made the rounds like everyone else's, passed from room to room, sometimes to kids I barely even knew. The teachers tried to keep track of who had what, but with over 1,000 students, yeah, good luck. So when I got mine back, I wasn't expecting anything weird. I just remember sitting on the bus, flipping through the pages, grinning at dumb messages from friends until I saw it. A short note under a photo of a kid I couldn't place. Hags. I'll be seeing you again. Signed Brady Keller. I must have read it 3 or 4 times before I even processed the name. I didn't know him. Not even in a passing way. No classes, no lunch period, nothing. I showed a couple of friends later and they shrugged it off. Said maybe he got books mixed up. That happens. Or maybe he was just trying to be funny in a creepy way. But that page, it stuck with me. Still does. It wasn't the message exactly. It was the certainty in it, like whoever wrote it knew it would land, knew it'd be found. It didn't read like a joke, it read like a plan. And what messes with me now is, I must have walked past him dozens of times without ever noticing. Or maybe I never did, but he noticed me. And somehow, that was enough. A few nights before everything, my house phone rang just after dinner, which was already weird. Nobody calls the landline anymore unless it's spam or a grandparent. But it was late, and I picked it up without thinking. No one said anything, just breathing. Slow, steady, a little too close to the receiver, and something faint in the background, like a TV maybe. It wasn't clear. Some kind of low chatter, like a game show or commercial. I stood there for a few seconds waiting for someone to say something, thinking maybe it was a bad connection, but nothing came. Eventually, I just hung up. At the time, it felt like nothing. Just one of those things. Maybe a bored kid playing around. Maybe someone who dialed wrong and realized too late. I didn't think about it again until a few days later when everything else had already gone sideways. It's stupid, but I even told my friends about the call. Laughed it off. Some weirdo heavy breathing into the phone, the way you do when you're trying not to overthink something. But now, I can't help but wonder, that background noise, that timing, the way it came out of nowhere and led to nothing, it doesn't feel random anymore. Not when I line it up with everything else. Not with what came after. I hate that I can't prove it was him. I hate that I didn't pay more attention to it when it happened. But mostly I hate the idea that someone might have been testing the line, seeing if I'd pick up, seeing how close they could get without being noticed. And I did pick up. I answered. I gave whoever it was exactly what they wanted, and now I can't unhear that silence. We were in the basement that night. Me, Charlie, Drew, and Daniel. One of those classic end-of-year sleepovers. The kind where time stops meaning anything. Just bags of chips, way too much soda, and hours of video games. That kind of dumb joy you only get when school's finally behind you. We were loud. I remember that part clearly. Nobody was worried about volume since my parents were way upstairs, and the basement sort of felt like our own world. I was just starting to forget the yearbook thing, the weird call, all of it. Everything felt light, and then we heard the knock. It wasn't like banging or pounding. It wasn't frantic. It was just measured. A series of sharp knocks, spaced out, like whoever was doing it didn't want to be ignored, but didn't want to scare us either, at least not yet. And in a second, everything changed. No one said anything right away. The noise had landed so cleanly in the middle of all our noise that it felt unreal, like we'd imagined it, but we hadn't. We froze, that kind of dead silent freeze where everyone looks at each other like, "You heard that too, right?" It was the storm door, the one on the side of the house that almost nobody used, the one that didn't even face the street. I remember thinking it could have been anything, a neighbor, a delivery mistake, a friend pulling a prank. I wanted to believe that, but even then, in that exact moment, I knew it wasn't random. It was too specific, too quiet, too intentional. That was the moment the whole night shifted, and I don't think we ever really got the mood back after that. Not completely. There was something deliberate about how it all played out. Whoever was outside that night, they weren't just showing up. They were staging something. First, the storm door knock, like a warning shot, loud enough to get our attention, quiet enough not to wake anyone upstairs. Then nothing for a while, just long enough for us to start second-guessing what we heard. Then it shifted to the back porch. Same kind of knock, same rhythm. That's what unsettled me. How calculated it all felt. Whoever it was knew exactly where to go, how to move without being obvious. Not hiding, but never stepping fully into view either. Like they were letting us see just enough to keep the tension alive. We crept upstairs because, at that point, none of us knew what to make of it. There was still this tiny part of me hoping it was just a friend messing with us, a bad prank, something explainable. I peeked through the narrow glass beside the back door, and there he was, standing just off-center under the porch light, far enough back that I couldn't see every detail, but close enough to recognize the shape of his face, that hair, that stiff posture, that slight tilt of the head. I remember my stomach dropping. It was him, Brady Keller, the kid who signed my yearbook. The kid I didn't even know. The kid who wasn't supposed to be part of my life in any way. He wasn't moving, just standing there, like he was waiting for something. Some signal, some opening, like he'd been there longer than we realized. Maybe watching, maybe listening. And the worst part was, he looked so calm, like all of this was unfolding exactly the way he wanted. I couldn't stop staring. There he was, just outside my house, like it was the most normal thing in the world, like he'd been there 100 times before. Brady Keller, that name from the yearbook that had meant nothing and suddenly meant too much. He stood with this weird kind of confidence, not smug exactly, but settled, like he knew the layout, like he knew which door we'd come to, which window had the clearest view. It didn't feel like someone showing up by accident. It felt like someone arriving on cue, but it was the way he looked at me that really did it. That look like we were supposed to recognize each other, like we shared some unspoken bond, some unfinished thing. I didn't know him. I know I didn't. But the way he locked eyes with me, it was like he believed we'd been circling each other for years. His face was calm, too calm, a smile barely there, like he was holding back something. But his eyes were cold, not angry, just hollow, disconnected, like the rest of him hadn't gotten the memo that this wasn't normal. He didn't seem nervous, didn't fidget, didn't shift his weight, just stood there, watching. I remember thinking he wasn't trying to get in. He was already in, not in the house, but in the moment, in the story, like everything that was happening was already written out, and he was just playing his part while we scrambled to figure out the rules. And for a second, I felt like the intruder, like I was the one who didn't belong in that space, like he'd been waiting for us to realize it, and somehow that was worse than anything he could have said. I shouldn't have opened the window. Even just that tiny crack, I knew better, but I needed to hear him, needed to know why he was there, needed to make sense of it somehow, even if part of me already knew I wouldn't get anything close to that. At first, he was friendly, way too friendly, like he was just dropping by, like this was some weird social call between people who actually knew each other. He smiled, made small talk, said things that were almost normal if you ignored the context completely. There was something rehearsed about it, like he'd practiced how this was supposed to go in his head 1,000 times, and I had already messed it up just by looking uncomfortable. Then one of my friends said something. I don't even remember what, and Brady's face just folded. It was like watching someone shut a door in slow motion. 1 second he was calm, pleasant even, and the next, everything about him hardened. His expression didn't just shift, it cracked. There was no anger at first, just this eerie blankness. Then his voice got louder, fast. His hands twitched. His eyes darted from face to face, like he was trying to figure out who ruined his script. And then he looked right at me, and I swear, I've never seen someone look so betrayed. Not furious, not dangerous, wounded, like I had broken some promise I never made, like I was supposed to be someone to him, and I'd failed. He started shouting things I still don't understand about my friends, about things he shouldn't have known. The smile was gone. All the calm, gone. What was left felt feral, and in that moment, I stopped seeing a kid outside my house. I saw something else entirely. My parents came downstairs right as things were starting to spiral. I barely remember hearing their footsteps. Everything felt like it had slowed to sludge, my breath, my thoughts, even the panic. But by the time they hit the last few steps, he was already gone, just not there anymore, like he'd melted into the dark. We tried to explain, all 4 of us talking over each other. The knock, the window, the stuff he said. I could tell my parents didn't know what to make of it. I mean, how do you even begin to explain something like that? A stranger showing up at your house isn't unusual in theory, but this wasn't random. This was built, specific, pointed. The next morning, my mom called the school. I was half hoping they'd tell her he was just some awkward kid who misunderstood a joke, something harmless, something with a name, but instead they told her Brady had been expelled. Weeks ago, long before the yearbooks were passed out. That part still messes with me. If he was expelled, how did he get in the building to sign anything? How did he even know what day to come back? I asked around quietly. Nobody remembered seeing him on the last day. Nobody remembered much about him at all. It was like he'd been erased, like he was never supposed to be part of the end-of-year picture. Just a name buried in the middle of a thick crowd. One you don't notice until it's too late. And yet, there he was, in my yearbook, outside my house, looking at me like we'd been circling each other for years. No one could get in touch with his family. No one knew where he went, and I still don't know how he ever found me. You ever have one of those kids in school you think about years later? Not because they were a friend or anything, but because something about them never really made sense. For me, that was Elias. This was back in 7th grade. He was in my homeroom, and I think maybe we shared 1 or 2 other classes, but I honestly can't say for sure. He just kind of existed on the edges, like he was there but not really in it, you know? Everyone else had their little groups, or at least tried to blend in. Elias didn't even seem to care. Not in a cool, rebellious way, more like he never got the memo that he was supposed to participate in anything. He wore the same exact outfit every single day, oversized burgundy windbreaker, cargo shorts, even when it was freezing out. People used to joke that he must not own anything else, but I never once saw him acknowledge it. He'd just walk in, sit in the exact same seat, always the back right corner, closest to the wall and farthest from the door, and stare down at his desk like he was waiting out a storm. His voice threw everyone off. It was too deep, not in a puberty hit early kind of way, just off. Like hearing a grown man's voice coming from a kid who still hadn't hit 5 feet tall. Anytime he had to read out loud, people would snort or whisper stuff, but he never reacted. Not once, at least, not that I ever saw. And I still don't know if that meant he didn't care, or if he cared way too much and just hid it better than anyone else. Looking back, I don't know what was ever going on with him. And that's the part that sticks. Recess was supposed to be this little pocket of freedom. 20 minutes to mess around, trade snacks, talk about games, that kind of thing. But Elias, he did the same thing every single day. Without fail, he'd walk straight across the field and stand by the fence at the edge of the property. The one that ran along the creek with all those low-hanging trees and overgrown weeds. He never touched a soccer ball, never sat on the benches, didn't even pretend to be part of anything. Just stood there, staring into the woods like he was waiting for something to happen. I used to watch him sometimes, not out of curiosity exactly, more out of habit. He never moved much, just stood real still, but once or twice I swear I saw his mouth moving. Not like singing or talking to himself, more like whispering, like you would if someone was standing right there with you. But there was never anyone else there, at least, not that I saw. Kids used to spread rumors, like they do. Some said he had a twin who lived in the woods. Others swore they saw someone answering him from the trees. I never bought into that stuff. Still don't. But there was one time my friend Braden came over, dead serious, and said he saw Elias digging by the fence with a stick. Not playing, digging. Like he was trying to bury something. I remember laughing it off at the time. Told Braden he was probably just messing around, or maybe he dropped something. But thinking about it now, I wish I had asked more questions, or paid more attention. Because whatever he was doing over there, it wasn't recess, and it sure as hell wasn't normal. The last day of school always had this weird, chaotic energy to it. At our school, we had this unofficial tradition where everyone would sneak into different classrooms just for fun, I guess. Shuffle around, confuse the teachers, act like it was a big prank. Most of the staff played along like they'd seen it 1,000 times. It was harmless, really. I never liked it though. Something about not knowing where people were supposed to be made me uneasy. So I stayed in my assigned room, room 107. That's probably why I remember the number so clearly. The weird part? Elias was in there too, which didn't make sense. I didn't remember him ever being part of that class. Maybe he got shuffled in by mistake, or maybe he was just drifting around like everyone else. Either way, it stuck with me, because he didn't look like he was just killing time. He looked off. He was jittery. That's the only word I can think of. His leg was bouncing under the desk like he couldn't control it, and he kept looking around, not like someone who's bored, but like someone keeping tabs. Like he was checking where people were, who was sitting where, how full the room was. His eyes didn't rest anywhere for long. I remember trying not to stare. I didn't want to make eye contact. Something about the way he was scanning the room made me feel like I wasn't supposed to see him doing it. And even though the room was full of noise, kids talking, laughing, dragging chairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that something underneath it all wasn't right. Like there was a current running beneath the floor, and only a few of us could feel it humming. I've never been great with names, but back then I was good with faces. I'd been at that school long enough to know who was who. Even if we didn't talk, you just pick it up over time. Hallway sightings, assemblies, lunch tables. It's hard not to. That's why it stood out to me right away. There were kids in room 107 that day I had never seen before. Not just one or two. There were several. And sure, with everyone hopping between classes as part of that last day prank, it wasn't that weird to see unfamiliar faces. But this was different. These kids didn't look lost. They weren't laughing or messing around like everyone else. They were quiet, still, just sitting there like they were supposed to be there. And then there was this moment, small, but I remember it like it's still playing out in my head. Miss Kalb, our teacher, picked up the classroom phone. She kept her back to us while she talked, and I remember noticing how her voice dropped, almost like she didn't want anyone hearing what she was saying. Then she left the room. About a minute later, another teacher came in. Someone from the room next door, I think. They didn't say a word to the class, just walked straight over to a few of those unfamiliar kids and leaned down next to their desks, whispered something, and just like that, the kids stood up and followed them out. No one else in the class even blinked. They just kept joking around, passing worksheets they weren't doing. But I saw it. I definitely saw it. The way those kids got up without a sound, like they knew this was going to happen, like they were waiting for it. I still don't understand why I was the only one who noticed. It didn't even happen on the last day, but I keep going back to it, like it's connected somehow. Like if I could just understand why, the rest might make more sense. It was maybe 2 days before everything, lunch period. Elias was sitting alone as usual, same corner of the cafeteria he always picked. But this time he had something in his hands. One of those old disposable cameras, the kind you wind with that scratchy little wheel and then toss when it's done. It caught people's attention because, I mean, who even brings one of those to school? It wasn't for a project or anything. No one else had one. He was just using it, quietly, snapping photos when he thought no one was looking. I only caught it because I happened to glance over at the right time. He was pointing it toward the middle of the room, where kids were eating and goofing around. And the look on his face, there wasn't one. No smile, no smirk, just blank. A teacher noticed eventually and walked over, took the camera from him. He didn't argue, just handed it over like it didn't matter. I never saw the pictures myself, only heard what people were saying afterward. Could have been rumors, sure, but the way it spread and the way some of the teachers started acting, I don't know. They said it was full of photos of students eating, like uncomfortably close, mid-bite, not posed, not fun, just weird. And mixed in were a bunch of shots of the fence behind the school, different angles, some out of focus, like someone was studying it. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now it feels like it meant something. I just wish I knew what. The fire alarm went off just after we'd gotten into our fake little groups for the end-of-year worksheet. No one was really working, just talking and wasting time. I remember thinking it was probably part of the tradition too, like maybe someone pulled the alarm as a last-day prank. But then I looked at Miss Kalb. She didn't even flinch. No sigh, no annoyed expression, no raised eyebrows, nothing. She just stood up, told us to line up, and moved toward the door like she had already been expecting it. That was the first thing that made me feel off. We filed out into the hallway, down the stairs, and out into the field behind the school like we always did during drills. Everyone was laughing, messing around, treating it like a break. I stood with the other homeroom kids, just kind of spacing out, and then I turned around. I don't even know why I did it. Habit maybe. But I looked back at the school, at the long blank row of second-story windows facing the field, and I swear something moved. Just a flicker, like someone ducking out of sight behind the glass. Quick, sharp, not enough to be sure of anything, but enough that I felt it in my chest. That drop, that twist, like my body noticed before my brain caught up. The building was supposed to be empty. Everyone had been cleared out. That's what drills were for. But something about the way it moved. It didn't feel like a janitor or teacher still inside. It felt like someone who didn't want to be seen. I didn't say anything. What would I have even said? I saw a shadow? I felt weird? No one else noticed. Or if they did, they didn't bring it up. And maybe I shouldn't have either. But it still sticks with me. They let us out early that day. No announcements, no classroom wrap-up. Just teachers walking around with clipboards telling us to call home. No buses. We weren't going back inside either. Everyone stood around the pickup loop like it was some weird half-day field trip nobody signed up for. No one explained anything. And honestly, most of the kids didn't care. They were just happy to leave early. But I remember watching the front entrance of the school where the police had gone in and thinking, this wasn't just a fire drill, something had happened. I just didn't know what. My mom picked me up about 20 minutes later. She didn't say much in the car at first, just kept checking the rearview mirror like she was waiting for someone to tail us. And then when we got home, she sat me down and told me what the school had said. Apparently, a group of kids who didn't even go to our school had somehow gotten inside. No one knew how, or maybe they did and just weren't saying. The school found stuff in one of their backpacks. Tools, sharp ones, maybe worse, depending on who was talking. And here's the part that's never stopped replaying in my head. My mom said the school believed Elias had let them in, through the fence, during recess. I've thought about that over and over. All those days he stood out there. The way he never looked back at us. The camera, the digging, the window, every piece I ignored. He didn't come back after that. Not the next day, not the next year, just gone, like he'd never been there at all. I keep wondering, was he part of something? Or was he just a kid trying to survive in the only way he knew how? I honestly don't know. I don't think I ever will.